As we get ready to wrap up, just one or two more questions. Let's talk about folks that have chronic illnesses that are prevalent in people of color community. Research shows that mental health disorders are pretty common among folks that are also plagued by conditions like chronic lung disease, by asthma, serious heart conditions, diabetes. We all know they run in people of color communities. They're prevalent there. I'm wondering about if the link between COVID rates and those conditions. So we've talked about people of color. Sheree, you said there's nothing biological about Black and brown people that makes them more susceptible, but do those conditions, I, for instance, am hypertensive, does that make me, some of the data has been a little confusing. Is controlled hypertension, for instance, better than uncontrolled hypertension? I control mine via medication and daily cardio. Does that help protect me? And does the variety of conditions that people of color are managing, are all of those making it more, are those making us more susceptible to this virus?
Right.
And thus then more vulnerable with regard to our mental health?
Right. So anytime you have any of those pre-existing health conditions, you are at a greater risk for having a worse outcome from anything, and particularly coronavirus. In fact, I will actually share with you that during this pandemic, I actually tested positive for the coronavirus, COVID-19, and I had symptoms, and my personal health history is I chronically have asthma and allergies. And one of my first concerns when as a patient and having COVID-19 was that, wow, this can really flare up my asthma and be really detrimental for someone like me. And because of that, because I knew I had that comorbidity, I had to make sure of a couple of things. One, that my immunity health was really, really as strong as it could be, right? So I'm eating healthy plant-based foods. I'm drinking lots of fluids. I'm making sure to get all of my activity. Secondly, I had to make sure that I controlled my chronic condition, as you mentioned with your hypertension. I had to make sure that all of my maintenance medications that I'm supposed to take every day, or as needed medications for symptoms, that I took and I stayed on top of, as well as taking my supplemental vitamins, and like I said, eating nutrient rich foods. So I had to consider all of those things in the scheme of things to make sure that I gave myself the best odds to not only manage symptoms, but also survive having COVID-19. In addition to that, even though I did have COVID-19, I also still took the vaccine, as we're still finding out more information about how this specific version of this coronavirus is responding to the environment and people, and getting more and more research. I want to make sure, as a person with a risk, that I am as protected as I possibly can be. So I'm also an advocate for that. So I do all the things that I can personally control for my own personal health, and to protect me from not only just the possibility of having COVID-19, but also being protected from all the detrimental effects that it can happen. And I truly believe that because of those things, having a controlled chronic condition, also practicing healthy lifestyle habits, and also practicing methods of prevention through vaccination, which I'm a believer in vaccination and other vaccinations as well, that I've had, that those things do contribute to my overall success, and have, quite honestly. So I think you're absolutely right. When there is a difference between a controlled chronic condition and just a chronic condition, but both do present a risk for having a negative impact. If my lungs that are chronically inflamed have scarred tissue, I'm at a greater risk of a complication if it does in fact happening, it being worse, or unfortunately, through people being intubated, and also those that we have lost to COVID-19. So you
Wow.
really have to consider all of those things when you're looking at chronic conditions and their impact. And then, of course, my first thought, like I said, when my test came back positive, I immediately got worried about my chronic condition. Like, this is what's, taking people out with COVID, is the respiratory
For
failure, right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
this is
Wow.
the issue that I have. But luckily, my next thought was, okay, Sheree, do everything within your power to be as healthy as possible, physically, as well as mentally. I doubled down on my sleep patterns, making sure I was getting enough balance between sleep and rest, making sure that I was doing my daily gratitude and meditation, also talking to my mental health professional. So everything that I could do, I took responsibility for doing to make sure that I came out on the other side successful. And I'm very thankful that I did not have a severe case of COVID-19, and that I was able to come out on the other side. But I really do contributed to all of those things that I put in place, as well as I've seen with patients as well. People that commit to doing all of those things tend to fare well in any situation. Honestly, in my entire healthcare career, patients that lean in to really doing everything that they can personally do in addition to our medical treatment
Mm.
usually fare well and also cope better with the situation in general. I mean, I've talked to cancer patients that are optimistic and hopeful and grateful for the care that they're getting, even with a terminal diagnosis. So it's kind of, back to that old adage, and if you're religious, what a man thinks, so is he, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's mind over matter when it comes to adopting those things to really reduce your risk.
You really, none of us know. You couldn't possibly know how you contracted the virus, Cherie. One might assume it was through your job. You're right on the front line. You're caring for people who are ill. So let me just take an opportunity. I do it every chance I get. Thank you, thank you, thank you for doing what you do on a daily
Mhm.
basis to try to keep everybody else healthy. And I'm so happy to hear that you have come out on the other side of that. So thanks a lot.